Thank you everyone for joining today and welcome. We are so excited to be together on day 2 of our Taos Institute gathering, Unfolding Dialogues, Relational Resources for Global Good, a week-long series of global events. So welcome, welcome. I am Dawn Dole, the Executive Director for the Taos Institute. We are a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to developing, sharing, and expanding social constructionist theory and practice, focusing on relational, collaborative, appreciative, and dialogic practices. We bring together scholars and practitioners, students, and the ever curious from various disciplines like organization development and change, leadership, education, therapy, healthcare, research, and more. We have a publication wing with more than 40 printed books and over 90 downloadable books in 12 languages. We offer workshops, conferences, a diploma program, and free monthly webinars called Dialogue with the Author. And you can find all of this and many more resources like dissertations and videos and podcasts on our website. And again, I'd like to welcome and thank everyone for joining us today for the second Daily Global Connection Plenary. We hope you enjoyed day 1 of our gathering. And you should know, because it's very exciting, we have over 60 events happening this week in a variety of languages at various time zones from around the world and hosted by people all around the globe. We have people joining us from more than 32 countries, right? We're probably up to 35 or 36 countries now. And just about every discipline you can think of, and including students, researchers, practitioners, professionals, and again, the ever curious. And we're all here to explore, learn, share, and co-create practices from the local to the global that focus on how social constructionist ideas and practice can help us create and bring forward new ways of going on together in this world that we are in, facing global challenges in this ever increasing, volatile, and complex world. More than ever, we need innovative ideas and practices that promise new ways for relating, co-creating, coming together, and going on together. So thank you for being part of these dialogues this week. I'd like to introduce our plenary for today. The title is Context and Culture, Influence, Stories, and Conversation, and Future Possibilities. Our guests today are Shi-Jiuan Wu from Taiwan and Inés Sametband from Canada. Our hosts for today, our conversational hosts, are Harlene Anderson, Sally St. George, and Pamela Brett-MacLean. And while they're coming on, I would like to just introduce Harlene briefly. She's a co-founder of the Taos Institute, co-founder of the Houston Galveston Institute and Access Success, and one of the founders and directors of the ICCP program, the International Certificate in Collaborative and Dialogic Practice. Harlene is the author of Conversation, Language, and Possibilities, a Postmodern Approach to Therapy. She's co-editor of several books, including the newly published text, Collaborative Dialogic Practice, Relationships and Conversations that Make a Difference Across Contexts and Cultures. She's also the author of numerous journal articles, and book chapters on postmodern, collaborative, dialogic approaches to practices across disciplines, contexts, and cultures. So happy to have Harlene with us. And Sally St. George is Professor Emerita from the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. Sally serves as a member of the Taos Institute Board of Directors and is co-editor-in-chief of the Qualitative Report. Her academic specialty has been engaging in and teaching social work and family therapy. She is also invested in qualitative inquiry as it relates to practice. Together with Dan Wolf, she developed research as daily practice to help practitioners utilize and develop new knowledge based on a systemic examination of their practice questions that are in line with the ways in which they practice. And Pam, Brett-MacLean from Canada, who right now is in London, is a member of the Taos Institute Associate Council, completed her PhD in interdisciplinary studies at the University of British Columbia. She's an associate professor of psychiatry and co-founder and director of the Arts and Humanities in Health and Medicine program at the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry at the University of Alberta. Since 2020, she has participated in the inaugural cohort of University of Alberta faculty involved in the Alberta Institute, Wenzhou Medical University, in China's first cooperative education institution specializing in medicine. And now I'd like to turn it over to our hosts, Pam, Harlene, and Sally. And in a few minutes, they will be introducing our guests.
So I would like to welcome everyone on behalf of the Taos Institute Board and our associates and my colleagues on the plenary. I welcome you to today's plenary, which Dawn has given you the title of, but I'll repeat it again: Context and Cultural Influence Stories and Conversations and Future Possibilities. Our plenary aims to continue the spirit that we were all basking in yesterday. Our storytellers will be introduced in a few minutes by Pam. Often the chasm between people from differing cultures, language, and views seems implausible or impossible to navigate, even when the best of intentions. We invite you to join us in listening to our two associates who will share their stories of experiences of bridging the chasms, adapting and readapting to the foreign and the familiar, and reflecting on what they have learned or took from their experiences. Shi-Jiuan Wu and Inés Sametband will share stories of entering a foreign territory, and for Shi-Jiuan, returning home as well. I invite you to be attuned to the dialogic process of listening to the spoken words and being aware of your own inner conversations as you listen, as what you might be creating as your silent thoughts and the speaker's words bump with yours. So I'll turn it over to Pam.
Thank you, Harlene. I will just briefly outline how we will be moving through this session, and then pass it on to Sally for introductions to our panelists. So Shi-Jiuan and Inés will both share reflections as Harlene has described, and then we will all together have a bit of a appreciative, reflexive, responsive sort of bit of a conversation, and invite you then as well to post your responses and different thoughts that or ideas that are resonating with you. So shortly after that, we will have a small group aspect to the session in Zoom breakout rooms of about 4 to 5 people in each to continue a more personal sharing, and then all come back together for large group sharing to continue the conversation and dialogue. So looking forward to all of that, and passing it on over to Sally right now. And welcome to you all.
Thank you. I have the great honor to introduce two very special women who are both my colleagues and friends and have been for a long time. Shi-Jiuan Wu from Taiwan earned her PhD in marriage and family therapy from Iowa State University. After studying and working in the United States for 2 decades, she moved back to Taiwan. In 2013, she founded the Center for Creative Dialogue in Taipei. In 2015, she assisted the Shanghai Postmodern Dialogue in China to begin its development and has continued to serve as the center consultant. In 2021, she founded the Asian Center for Creative Dialogue. She has committed herself to continuously introducing narrative and dialogue-based knowledge and related practices to Chinese-speaking communities throughout Asia. Welcome, Shi-Jiuan. Inés Sametband, who is also from Calgary, our hometown now, is an assistant professor with the Department of Psychology, Mount Royal University. She is a registered marriage and family therapist and a Taos associate. Her clinical work is informed by discursive and collaborative family therapy approaches. Her research focuses on how locally relevant cultural ideas and practices influence family relations and how they feature in therapy conversations. She is currently conducting a qualitative inquiry on how family therapists engage with clients in ways that recognize and are inclusive of clients' preferred cultural memberships. Welcome to both of you. So glad to have you. And now I'd like to turn it over to Shi-Jiuan. I invite you to share your story.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Harlene. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Don. It's really an honor to have the chance to be here to share my story. And I have been thinking what story that I can share with you. There are so many stories in my professional journey and my personal journey. But I think that maybe I can divide the phase or 3 phases to share with you. The first phase is studying and working in the States. In 1985, I had a chance with my husband enter into USA to study. It was quite a both exciting but also challenging experience because I no longer can use my own mother tongue language, and I was not familiar with English at that time. So it was very, very challenging. It's hard to use words to describe the experience. And also the culture, even it's new, it's exciting, but it's also very unfamiliar. And how do I live in the unfamiliar environment? I remember back then my classmate would often ask me, how was my weekend? And I thought, what does that mean? And people ask, did you get a chance to relax? Did you get a chance to have fun? And then that was not something I grew up with. So often Monday was like the time to be asked. And I didn't do much. I continued my weekly work. So there's interesting and new and sometimes odd experience for me. And food, that at that time I was not able to get the food that I normally could get, such as tofu. I could get many kinds of tofu, but when I was in the States, I was only able to get 1 or 2 kinds. So entering into an unfamiliar world, and also that every day is risk-taking. You never know what's going to happen. Every day is a new navigation, and self is constantly evolving and challenging. It's unlike living in the in-home setting. And also after finishing school, that I started working as a director and vice president working in a multicultural and multidisciplinary work. And it was both rich, but also very, very challenging, because being an Asian, and there's something that you normally don't have to talk about. People challenge me as an Asian to be the director for the group. But it's a rich experience. And then in the first phase, what touches me is something I had a chance to experience, meeting different ideas, such as at that time, getting to know lots of gray minds' work. Okay, I have to be mindful about the time. And second phase, after moving back home, of course, I mean, often people say, how do you readapt? And I said, it's home, not much to have to readapt. And you immediately feel connected. And then after I moved back for a few years, I start thinking, how could I do something so I can create resources for the local community? So in 2013, I established the Center for Creative Dialogue. And I also want to say, introducing new ideas takes maybe 50 years, 100 years to introduce and also to grow in the community. So it's really a gentle and not a very easy process, but it's important to do that. And I also like to say Center for Creative Dialogue. Probably some people don't know, there's Chinese name before Center for Creative Dialogue, Intersen Center for Creative Dialogue. It's actually in honor of Insu Kimberg, Michael White, Tom Anderson. So the center that has this Chinese name. And then in 2015, because I also work in China a lot, I travel to many places. And so in that context, that I work with Shanghai team member, start this Shanghai Postmodern Dialogue Center. So they are doing wonderful work. And the thinking is that how to create resources for local environment, how to bring social construction, relational, dialogical, narrative, collaborative, reflective practice to the Mandarin speaking community. Inviting international scholars. And I'm just thinking that we invite when the group, they are able to listen to Ken and Mary's speech in the room, listen to Sheila's speech, listen to Harlene's speech, listen to Sally's speech, listen to Dan's speech, listen to Arlene Katz's speech, listen to Yako Sekula's speech, listen to many international scholars' speech. As someone, I think that I'm like a bridge. When I see people have the community, have the opportunity to experience not only the concept, the great mind, but also who they are as a person in the room. I think those are something very meaningful for me. I feel like I'm I'm someone with a lot of privilege. So how to do this as a bridge, and also introducing the books. So there's Chinese books in translation, and then many people talk about when they are able to meet great minds, and also they are able to read their books. Yesterday, I had a supervision class, and one participant who worked with me, and she said that in her work, she has been very much used social construction as her guiding principle to work with students, to work with her clients, and in northern China. So, and then it's wonderful to hear that. It's just yesterday.
Fue maravilloso escuchar esto.
I need to stop a little bit.
¿Quieres?
I totally forgot. I need to stop. the translation.
Actually, yeah.
You're absolutely right on time, Shi-Jiuan.
Oh.
Thank you so much. And I just thought that was amazing, the emphasis on social construction in terms of navigating always challenging circumstances and being a bridge and never fully arriving, but always developing. So I thank you for that and pass it over to Inés at this moment and look forward to when we can all talk together as well.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of my thoughts. And I think this is a very important conversation, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Shi-Jiuan, I was listening to your comments, your story, and I could relate in many ways. I think you talked about being a bridge, and that's kind of what I would like to share with you and to share here. I guess my relationship with contact and cultural influences has been a relationship of unease, of struggle. En castellano sería malestar. Malestar es una palabra que sienta mejor para lo que quiero decir, but in English is unease or a little bit of a struggle. And it's not necessarily a bad struggle or a bad unease. I think it has to do with this space where it's, bridging something, but it's difficult to articulate. And for me, this unease is something that it's noticeable. It stirs things up for me. And I think that it's important to pay attention to it. And actually, as I was thinking about kind of what to share in this conversation, and thinking about the experiences in which this unease, with this malestar has showed up, this unease came up for me, right? So, it was kind of, or it is a little bit of a risk to talk about this unease, because potentially it could set me up for an experience of unease. But I do think that is something that we need to pay attention to, and that it can be potentially very, very important, because it has to do with this bridge that you were talking about. So for me, this unease, this malestar, has to do with something that's not recognized in the relationship. And as I was thinking about the risk of talking about this unease, the risk is that it could be understood that the unease corresponds to me because of my cultural background, or because of the fact that I don't speak English as my first language, and my first language is Spanish. And I would like to shift our attention to more to the bridge that you were talking about, more to what happens when we go beyond the assumptions that we make about others in terms of how we relate to others. When something does not get recognized in a relationship, I think sometimes it happens in a way that it's very subtle, but it's also very persistent as well. This unease stays there as something that is in the relationship, but it's not talked about. I think that sometimes assumptions tend to invisibilize the relationship, because our assumptions are such that we end up assuming that someone will relate to someone else, or will be in a way in a relationship that is based on their cultural background. And I can think of one story where, I think that this unease was very clear to me. And this happened, it happened a while ago, and I was doing counseling at an agency here in Calgary. And I was working mainly with immigrants. And I'm going to slow down for the translation, but a colleague of mine came looking for me, and she said, "Oh, here you are, diversity person. I need to consult with you." And she said, I'm working with a family, and this is an immigrant family, and they're asking me to give them advice about something, about what they were going through. But I don't give advice. This is not what we do in therapy. So, I'm sort of like, I don't know what to do, because they say that in their country of origin, that's what they would get if they go to a psychologist. The psychologist would tell them what to do. But I don't do that. So what do I do? She said to me. And so this unease, this malestar, was very present for me. And I think it was present for everyone in that situation, for my colleague, for the family, and also for myself as the diversity person. And I think that, even in the times that we're in, it's kind of easy to try to align ourselves with very polarized opinions, or positions, right? There are things that are happening today in the world that seem to draw us towards this polarized positions. And the problem, I think, with that is that when you end up taking one position that is very polarized, you lose sight of what is the relationship with the people that are maybe on the other side of the spectrum with those positions. And I think that this unease is a good sign to kind of go back to that relationship and see what is it that is going on, and how do people that are have very different perspective, how are they relating? So kind of like looking at how the cultural influences are being performed. What is it that we're inviting each other into when we assume that the other person will perform or will relate to us in a certain way based on their cultural identity or where they come from, etc. So I think that by shifting that focus to the relationship, something very different can happen. And one example of that, I think that it's quite easy to think about is greeting, saludar. So every group, I think in the planet, I don't know, but I think every group has some kind of greeting. So some people will give, a kiss in the cheek, or some people will do two, or shake hands, or vow, or wave, etc. But when there are two people that have different understanding of how to do greeting, because they belong to different groups, and they want to do greeting together, they have to find ways to sort of like attune to each other, so that they can actually complete the greeting practice in a way that is satisfactory for both of them. So they will share aspects, they will perform parts of the way they do greeting, and the greeting will result in a different kind of greeting, which cannot be anticipated beforehand because it is in the relationship. And I think that as professionals in whichever capacity we are, and myself, I'm a psychologist, I'm a family therapist, but in our relationships with others, there's many possibilities and future possibilities if we pay attention to that unease as something that it's calling us back to the relationship, as something that is kind of like signaling to something that it's not being recognized, and that has a lot of potential. So I'll leave it there. I'm curious to continue to the conversation.
At this point, I would invite Pam and Harlene to join in and to continue. Thoughts along the way. Shi-Jiuan, further thoughts after listening to Inés, and Inés, further thoughts, and then any other thoughts you'd like to contribute?
I was thinking about the connection between the two stories and the word challenge and the word unease. and how that as professionals, they were struggling and dealing with some of the same things that their clients were possibly dealing with. And I think whether those clients are from a different country or whether they're just from the same city or the same culture, again, I think, as you were speaking to this, the risk of generalizing and thinking that you know people ahead of time, taking the time to pause and step back and try to consider what's going on in our inner thoughts and in our hearts, in our gut, in our bodies. What is that telling us that we need to do?
I know, Shi-Jiuan, you were, I think, writing down different things too as you were listening to Inés, and I was when you were speaking as well. But I think to myself, it's the idea, Inés, that you helped to articulate for me is our orientation to, or being in and with the relationships that where we're navigating cultures and understandings and worlds, etc. If we believe that we're doing it to get it right, rather than always expanding, extending, learning new, developing new understandings, that's, I think, we appreciate that at the beginning and always that can help. I think about that sense of unease, and very often in, I think, Western culture, I don't know how it is everywhere in the world, that unease can often bring us to close down and turn away, perhaps because that's not comfortable, and we don't want to be perceived as getting it wrong. At the same time, I know with the students I am involved in teaching different sessions in China, the shyness, and also not being so quick, expect quick answers, but to create space for learning, for articulating across language, etc., and having that space to also hear back in different ways, different things, and to not know, but always be developing those understandings.
Well, the other thing, and it relates to what you're saying, is that sometimes I think that what we see as misunderstandings can be opportunities, like misunderstandings or getting it right, depending on where the person is from, and as Harlene was saying, it doesn't. I think with people coming from different places, it's more obvious because people come from different places, but it could be with someone that is from the same group, right? But it is not about getting it right, I don't think necessarily. It's about finding ways to understand, right? And by explaining to someone else, you also get transformed, and you also learn, and you also gain new understandings. I think that's also something clear with teaching, right? With teaching, I think we become better students because you learn to understand in a different way by the contributions of students. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but that kind of came to me.
I'm thinking like when I return to Taiwan, sometimes I work with the students in terms of working with the families. They are working together. And some of the families are struggling with a lot of life challenges, such as poverty, all of that. And then I work with the students about how we could work with them and how can we create that relational differences, relational space in being together. And we find that I think everyone, no matter what position they are in, need to be heard and need to be listened and need to know they are equal with everyone. So I think cultural is everywhere. And as you talk about, even within the group. So cultural in the cultural. And I also want to say, Pam, you talk about when you work with Chinese, there's some shyness, there's some quietness that when I was young back in the States, I was part of that shyness. I was that part of that quietness. And my professor say, Shi-Jiuan, you don't have to wait for other folks. Just interrupt and talk. And I said, I cannot do that. I think that listening to others is very important. And I think that, but at that time, there's no dialogue about this, dialogue about this, because the way how to be a student as a graduate student, that there's one particular way to be, other way is not allowed. And so how to give space for shyness, for quietness. And I like what Inés talk about. Sometimes challenges or unease can be an opportunity. So I'm thinking, what is opportunity behind shyness? What is the opportunity behind quietness? Because often this is viewed as not as good as outspoken.
Or even, how can the difference be appreciated because I was thinking, shyness can have a different meaning depending on the context. También, I'm starting to speak Spanish too, right? So sometimes it is because of being in an unfamiliar situation, that some things that have to do with our cultural identity, background, whichever we want to call it, we will perform those different, those preferences may be different depending on the context, right? But when there's no space for that, then that's when that, kind of like malestar, unease comes. And I think that it's good to pay attention to it. I don't think that we have to discard it.
And I think what can you learn from that, and how can you be attuned to that in a way that you can change the way that you're responding to the person? Because I think that people come to us, we have reputations, the context we're in, the organization, the agency, the discipline has reputations. And so that precedes us, and we often forget that. So people are not coming to see Shi-Jiuan or Inés or Sally or Pam or Harlene or anyone else here today. They're coming to see someone they don't know. And there has to be time for the unknown, for you to meet each other. And in a safe way, I think.
The way I'm putting things together is that I think both of you are outstanding teachers, and you've answered, I think, a very tough question for those of us who worry and wonder about cross-cultural experiences and work. And I'll go back to the question you asked, Inés, about what gets recognized in a relationship. And both of you spoke, and Shi-Jiuan, you named it, that you became a bridge across the two cultures, not just for yourselves, but I think as very good models and instructors for the rest of us too. And that we probably need to engage in more bridging thoughts, behaviors, recognitions, acknowledgements. Again, not so much to get it right, but to make the connection, because the bridge is a great connector. And so I appreciate that you guys were so clear in such a short amount of time and answered a big question so clearly. Thank you.
The word that comes to my mind is humility
Mm.
for the other person and for yourself.
Mhm, mhm. Anything else?
I think this is great that we have this space to have the conversation. I think that there's so much that I'm wondering. And then I think that as we talk about this, maybe we can co-create something together. Because I think the things I experienced 30 years ago, I know many people continue experiencing. So cross border, like we all are coming from different contexts. I wonder when I was much younger, I had the opportunity to talk with all of you or people from other parts of the world and to struggle together. How would that be different? So I appreciate everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to struggle, to think about this together.
Well, again, the word humility comes to my mind, not only in terms of what Inés and Shi-Jiuan were talking about, but also the stories within the small group, and always trying to be aware of how we are experiencing another person, what we might see or experience as, to use Inés's word, an unease in the distance or the difference, and to be able to pause and step back and carefully consider what we might be saying or doing that invites the person sitting in front of us in terms of their words and their behavior, that we're attributing their and their difference causing us unease. But what are we bringing to that unease?
Thank you. Just so inspiring. And I think the idea of sharing our stories and being aware of, the cultural differences that bring strength to our relationships and how we learn from each other is so important. So thank you for being part of this, especially for, how we can all together as a global community create our futures together. So story and conversation, culture and context. That's why we're here. So thank you for being part of this. And thank you, Shi-Jiuan and Inés and Harlene and Sally and Pam for organizing this time together.